Welcome everyone. We are now going to look at the models for lab practicum number 2. Starting with the lymphatic models. It comes from this large model. And so we're obviously going to zero in on certain parts to show you stuff. Okay, here we are at the top. The most important thing here is you see all these big yellow nodes? Those are your lymph nodes. Your lymph nodes are where the lymph fluid goes when we suck it out of the tissues. But in your lymph are also bacteria, viruses, and things. So guess what? We bring the liquid through these lymph nodes on the way to our venous blood to filter it, to clean it. We have macrophages that eat debris, and we have white blood cells that kill the bacteria. All right? And that's the whole purpose. Now, let's name these things. In the back of your head, occipital lymph nodes. Behind your ear, auricular lymph nodes. But in front of your ear, it's not auricular. It's named for your parotid gland, which is the big salivary gland here. Okay? Parotid. What would I call the one under my chinny chin chin? Mental. Okay? Lymph nodes. What would I call them in my neck? Cervical. Okay? And let's see. What would I call them in the armpit? Axillary. See how that works? It's not meant to be hard and tough. All right, now I see that I've left off the name here. All right, that's okay. Let's talk about it. Oh, by the way, if you're in your elbow, crook of your elbow, cubital. All right. What I want to say is we also have, there it is. I knew it was going to come up. We have trunks. Okay? Again, what's a trunk? A larger vessel. All righty? You have large lymph, all these small ones are just called lymph capillaries or lymph vessels. I'll never ask you to name it. All righty? But when they come together and become larger, they have a name. The ones that run along your jugular vein are called jugular trunks, left and right. And the ones that run across your subclavian veins is the subclavian trunk. Now, here is my caveat. You can see this one pretty easily, okay? You're going to have to assume it's this one here on this side. Got it? You can't tell. To me, they all look alike, but let's assume that this one on the top is the subclavian, and let's just assume that one of these is the subclavian, okay? I'm not going to be mean and say, pick this, and I'm going to pick this one. Oh, you're wrong. No. If I pick it and I say, what is this white vessel? It's a trunk. Got it? Otherwise, I'm saying, what's this yellow circle? That's going to be a lymph node. You can't confuse them. All right? Okay. Now, let's take a look here. Do you see this little white curly Q right here? And this one here? It comes from all the way down, goes all the way up, and empties. Again, spam. Happens around this time, every day. All right. We call this the thoracic duct because it picks up fluid from the thoracic region and dumps it into this vena cava. This one is called the right lymphatic duct because it picks up lymph fluid from the what side of the body? The right side. But here's the thing. Only the right side of the head, the right side of the chest, and the right arm. What about the legs, Mr. Weber? Thoracic. The thoracic picks up all the rest. Both legs and the left side of the body. Okay? But they don't call it left. They call it thoracic. That's how you tell them apart. Here we are, further down in the abdominal region. Gee, what would I call lymph nodes on the stomach? Gastric. How about lymph nodes on the celiac trunk? Celiac. How about on the mesentery, which is the connective tissue? Mesenteric lymph nodes. How about on the femoral artery? Femoral lymph nodes. Got it? How about here on the inside? So those were the iliac arteries, iliac lymph nodes, and 4. And superficially more, those are going to be the inguinal, okay, in the groin region. Everybody cool? All right. That's your femoral artery and vein. But this is the inguinal lymph nodes, all righty, in that area. How are we doing? Hanging in there? Okay. Gee, aren't they close to the liver? That's the liver. We just flipped it up so we can see better underneath it. Yeah, hepatic lymph nodes. So I don't think lymph nodes are going to be a big trouble. All right, here's a close-up just to make sure you understand. The thoracic lymph goes all the way up. And it's a big one, so it's the trunk. Got it? I know it's a duct. You know why? Oh, that's a good, perfect. If it's just a vessel, it's a vessel. If it's a bigger vessel, it's a trunk. But if it's being dumped into your venous blood, that's a duct. That's why duct here and duct here. Okay? The ducts are the last thing before we dump it into the venous blood. And that's because hopefully, having brought all of that lymph through all these lymph nodes, it's nice and clean. We've taken out the cell debris, we've taken out the bacteria and the bad guys, so we're just dumping pure plasma, liquid, into our blood. Okay? We've cleaned it out. All right, what would I call lymph nodes on the bronchi? The little tubes of your lung. Bronchial lymph nodes. Okay? And this is special because right here, that's called the bronchomediastinal lymph node because that's your mediastinum right here. Okay? All right. Cool beans? Subclavian. Okay. All right. Now take a look. This is your thoracic, but right here, there's a bulge. That bulge is called cisterna chyli. And we need to know this because chyle, C-H-Y-L-E, is fat, dissolved fat. Chyme, C-H-Y-M-E, is dissolved food. So chyme is in your intestines, but when I've digested my fats, they don't go into the blood, they go straight into the lymph first. And that's why this is the cistern, the large, of the chyle. Got it? That's what cisterna chyli means. Cool beans? And yeah, I didn't have the arrows, but you should be able to find out which one is which. Got it? Okay. We do need to know a little bit about our mouth and our nose. And these are the nasal concha, inferior, middle, and superior. This is why you never saw the superior when you looked inside the hollow nasal cavity. It's too high up in the head. This is the eustachian tube opening right here. This is the pharyngeal tonsil, also known as the adenoids. That's why you need to know this because the tonsils are part of the lymphatic system. All right? This is the tonsil on either side of the uvula, and that is called your palatine tonsils. And this is along the base of your tongue called the lingual tonsil. And base of the tongue, if you remember when you were a kid, you went to the doctor, and he would say, open your mouth and say ah, right? So you got to say ah. By saying ah, you've kind of flipped your tongue front down and the back up. So you can look at those tonsils in the back of your tongue and see if they're inflamed. All right? And if you can't, look like a tongue depressor and push your tongue down, make you gag. Okay? All right. That's your epiglottis, the door that closes over the glottis, which is the opening to your trachea. So the food will go down the esophagus, the tube behind your windpipe. All right? And these are your thyroid cartilages, the one that makes the Adam's apple for us guys. That's the front and that's the back. All right? Cool. Since we're going to be doing the respiratory systems right after that, use your respiratory models. Up at the top, that is your hyoid bone, right up here, which anchors your tongue. Thyroid cartilage underneath that, cricoid cartilage, which we're going to learn. These are your tracheal rings. Of course, brachiocephalic artery, brachiocephalic vein, left and right. See how Hadn't split yet. See, hadn't split yet. Okay. All right, you have 2 lobes on the left side, 3 lobes on the right side. Why don't we have 3 lobes here? Because the heart's in the way. The heart takes up the space for the 3rd lobe. In fact, there's a cutout here in your lung tissue for the heart called the cardiac notch. Alrighty, and of course there's your diaphragm. Cool beans? Alright, that's your trachea. Now, take a look. You see how these fissures are kind of straight? Horizontal fissures. Alrighty. How about this one? Coming at an angle? That would be an oblique fissure. Alright. There's your esophagus poking through. There's your abdominal aorta. What's the first vessel sticking out? Celiac trunk. Okay? Alright. There's your thyroid, the little butterfly on both sides. Okay, now if we open up our lung tissue, we're going to see there's your oblique fissure, see at an angle? That's more horizontal. You'll see red tubes, blue tubes, and these kind of grayish white tubes. Alrighty? Well, let's keep it simple. All of the red tubes are oxygenated. So, are they going to the lungs or coming from the lungs? From the lungs. So, these are going to be the pulmonary veins. The blue ones are coming from the heart. So they're going to be the pulmonary arteries on the way for the lungs to oxygenate them. That leaves the rest of the gray ones to be bronchioles, the little tubes that lead to the alveoli in your lungs. Okay, that's what they are. Don't make it any harder than that. And of course, don't forget, we can see some heart structures here. I get emails all the time. Well, which heart structures do I need to know? How about all the ones you can see? Can you see tri and bi? Can you see this semilunar valve? Can you see, the atria, the ventricles, I might choose 1 or 2 of them, right? Interventricular septum. All right. Now, let's move the heart out of the way and let's see some more lung capacity. You got your trachea going down, but then it's going to branch off into 2 bronchi. Before we branch off, there is a triangle here called the carina. Carina means keel of a boat. Well, the keel of a boat is triangle shaped. All right. Now, once we do that, we are going to branch off, and the primary is the first one going to the left and the right. Got it? That's your primary bronchus, going to the left side and the right side is your lungs. The very next branch is the secondary, going to this lobe, this lobe, this lobe. Got it? Same thing here. This goes to this lobe. This one is heading down to this lobe. Got it? So that's your secondary. Once we go past the secondary, any branch after that, right after that, is the tertiary. Your bronchi actually split 23 times before they get down to the smallest alveoli. Am I ever going to say, hey, which split is this? You can't tell. However, you can tell first, second, third. Got it? Okay. Anything beyond third is just a bronchial, a small bronchus. Got it? Just like it says here. Just bronchioles. Okay? Now, bronchiole, little bronchi, just like a venule, little vein, arteriole, little artery. Okay? All right. And there's your esophagus. Heading out. Here's a side view that opened it up. There's your epiglottis going over the hole called the glottis. There's your trachea. Behind is your esophagus. The front of this thing is called the thyroid cartilage because your cricoid cartilage is this. Small in the front, big in the back. There's your cricoid cartilage. Of course, there's your arteries and veins. Pretty simple. Here's another model showing you the same kind of stuff. Jugular. So jugular vein, so it's the blue. Carotid artery, the red. All right. See how horizontal those fissures are? See how oblique that fissure is? So that's what I'm saying. Do you know what this is? Oh, see? This is one of your salivary glands. The big one out here is the parotid. This one here is your submandibular, under the mandible. And this under your tongue is called the sublingual salivary gland, which are important to know for your digestive system. There's your thyroid cartilage. That's your thyroid gland. Make sense? Okay. Alrighty. Yeah, there we go again. Okay, don't forget, you can recognize your heart parts. Just because it's a different model, still the heart. Okay, this is a nice close-up of your alveoli. Okay, we're going way down into the lungs. This is called a terminal bronchiole because this is the last bronchiole before we get to these little ones that will actually do respiration. Because all along this little one are all these sacs. Got it? So that's why we call these little guys respiratory bronchioles, and this last one is the terminal. If you remember, where do you go to get on an airplane? The airport terminal. Back in the old days, it was the end of the building. You went outside, walked across the tarmac, and up the stairs to the airplane. Now the airplane pulls right up to the terminal, and there's that extendable trunk, that extendable, what they call umbilicus, where you can walk from the terminal straight into the plane. Alrighty? But that's why it's called the terminal. It's the last of it. Okay? That has nothing to do with exchanging gases. It's just bringing it in and bringing it out. Okay? Alright. So, as we know, anything red is a pulmonary vein, anything blue is a pulmonary artery. These are elastin fibers, so your bronchioles can be elastic. These are elastin fibers, so your alveoli can be elastic. Obviously, all the red stuff are the capillaries. Alrighty. Now, each bag is called an alveolus. When I have a bunch of them in a cluster, it's called an alveolar sac. And the tube in the middle is the alveolar duct of that alveolar sac. Okay? So the only time you see this, that's the sac, that's the duct. Okay? If I point to any one of these, it's just an alveolus. One little bag. Okay? All right. Close up. That's a mucus gland. These are smooth muscles which allow your bronchioles to constrict and to dilate. Alrighty? Remember, you can't open and close. I got a, asthma attack. Well, it can't close without a smooth muscle tightening. Got it? So you take in your inhaler and it opens up. Got it? All right. And they're a smooth muscle as well in between the alveoli. These are elastin fibers. Yes, they're painted in blue. These are elastin fibers. Don't ask me why, but they painted those in black. Still elastin fibers. All right? Okay, see? Each one's an alveolus. This picture is a close-up because I want to show you the pulmonary pleura. In other words, the layer around the alveoli. Okay? It's made up of 4 layers. The bottom layer is the capillary network. Above that is the collagenous layer, collagen fibers for strength. Above that is elastin fibers for springability. And then the outside looks almost like bathroom tiles. That's your epithelium. Together, called the pulmonary pleura. All right. And that's just, can you practice what they are? All right. If we flip that model around to the back side, we still see the blood vessels that we know, but I want you to pay attention to, look at these red blood vessels. One is a dark red, one is a lighter scarlet red. What is going on here? Well, the scarlet red one is called a bronchial artery. Just like the coronary arteries feed the heart tissue, the bronchial arteries feed the lung tissue. Because remember, this is simply bringing in blue blood to be converted into red and then back up for the rest of the body to use. But notice, see how little branches come off here? And that's because, hey, I got to feed the lung tissue, just like we have to branch off and feed the coronary tissue with the coronary arteries. We're going to feed the bronchial tissue with the bronchial arteries, alrighty? And once those arteries get turned from red to blue, it's a bronchial vein. Now, unfortunately, they painted this the same color as the bronchial veins, okay? But that's what it is, and that's just an anastomosis, the branching of it. Let's see how the red turned to blue. There you go, bronchial vein. Alrighty? But just be aware, these are not the same color red on purpose to make sure you know the difference. Alrighty, see, that's an anastomosis. Let's see how I tried to get close up to show you the stuff. Alright, okay, well now we can look at the same sagittal head, but in terms of, okay, what does this have to do with our respiratory system? Well, this hole in your nose is the external nare, and this big hole in the back of your throat from the back of your nose is called the internal nare, which leads to this tube. Now this tube is called the pharynx, but just like your blood vessels have different names for different locations, behind your nose it's called the nasopharynx. Behind your mouth it's called the oropharynx. And behind your larynx, your voice box, it's called the laryngeal pharynx. Okay? Trachea, esophagus in the back. Trachea covered in this blue cartilage, esophagus covered in this muscle. Okay? Because it's going to squeeze the food down. The hole is called the glottis, the door is called the epiglottis, above the glottis. Alright? Does that make sense? If we look at the old nose model that we looked at in 210, here are the bones of the internal nasal concha, inferior, superior. There's the cristagalli coming off your ethmoid bone. This is your sphenoid bone with the sphenoid sinus, and this is the little hypophyseal fossa where our hypophysis or pituitary gland sits. What's the septum of your nose made out of? Well, two bones and cartilage. The cartilage in the front is the nasal septum. The bones in the back, this is the vomer bone doing the bottom part, and this is the perpendicular plate of your ethmoid bone making the top. Okay? And oh, looky here. That's the opening to your eustachian tube. Here's your uvula. Here is your palatine tonsil. Here is your pharyngeal tonsil. There is your olfactory bulb with the olfactory nerves coming down to the olfactory foramina in your ethmoid zone. Yeah, there's your eustachian tube. Okay? All right, and these are sinuses that you find. A sinus in your frontal bone, frontal sinus. Sinus in your ethmoid bone, ethmoid sinus. Sinus in your sphenoid bone, sphenoid sinus. Okay? There's your hard palate made of bone. The soft palate is back here. Okay, now here is your larynx, your voice box. Alrighty? Seen from the front. At the top is the hyoid bone. In the front is the thyroid cartilage with the laryngeal prominence in the front. Then you have the cricoid underneath there and the C rings or tracheal rings underneath. All made of hyaline cartilage except for this, that's a bone. These points are called the lesser cornu. Cornu means point or horn. And this whole thing in the back is called the greater. On your thyroid cartilage, that's the superior horn, superior cornu, and the inferior cornu. All right? And again, thyroid, cricoid, tracheal prominence. Okay, cool beans? All right, now we're looking from the back side. See? Now we're going to look in from behind. There's the epiglottis on top. There's the hole that goes to your trachea. That's your thyroid cartilage in the front with the superior and inferior horns. This is the back of the cricoid cartilage. Up above here, these two are called the arytenoid cartilages. And on top, these little pointed cartilages are called corniculate, like a horn. Because cornu means horn, see, like a horn. Here are the muscles that work. And the muscles are nicely named for origin and insertion. Okay? The origin is the thyroid cartilage, and then it goes up to the hyoid. So when this tightens, the hyoid goes up and down. Got it? Look at what this one's called. Cricothyroid. So it's an anchor to the crico, and it pulls the thyroid up and down. 10-4. Now, on my test, what's Mr. Weber going to do? Ask you two easy questions or one harder question? So, which one is going to tell me you know two parts? The muscle. Because if I say, name this muscle, you've already told me, you know that is your hyoid and that's your thyroid. If I say, name this muscle, you've also told me that's the cricoid and that's the thyroid. Does that make sense? So I get 2 for the price of 1. Alrighty, same thing. I can see it now from the front. Alright, here we are in the back. In the back. Look at the cool names. Alrighty? Since these are the 2 arytenoid cartilages, we're not going to say arytenoid to arytenoid. We're going to say simply arytenoid muscle. Okay? But over here, I've got my cricoid going to my arytenoids. So this is cricoarytenoid. Got it? But cricoarytenoid what? Posterior. So you see most of it in the back. And then if we were to look down, that's your cricoarytenoid lateral. Make sense? We are looking down. This hole is the glottis. These 2 white strips here are the ligamentum vocalis, or the true vocal cords. Got it? All of this material on the side, sometimes it's connective tissue, sometimes it's just muscle tissue. Again, thyroarytenoid. Why? Because it goes from the thyroid that doesn't move to the arytenoids that do move. Okay? Thyroarytenoid muscle. These are what we call the false vocal cords. Only these 2 are the vocal cords. Don't look here. That's 2 strings you can pull to open it up on the plastic model. These are not vocal cords. Those are strings that you pull. See, they are attached to this. So I can pull on it. Cool beans? And here we are looking at that other model we saw earlier with the lungs and the heart in it. There's your what? Hyoid bone, and thyroid, and thyrohyoid muscle, cricothyroid muscle, that's your cricoid. There's your thyroid gland, trachea, right? And of course we know our blood vessels. And this pointed thing here is the carina, remember? The keyhole. And that's all these are. Do you remember what they are? Yeah. All right. Last but not least, for lab number 2 is the urinary system, the urinary models. Okay. Remember, this is our abdominal aorta. This is our inferior vena cava. 1, 2, 3 blood vessels coming out, right? Celiac, superior, inferior mesenteric. The ones going to our kidneys, renal artery and vein, left and right. Common iliac. We've cut it before they split into internal and external. Because it's not blood vessels. What we're doing here is the kidneys. So your kidneys take the blood and filter it. Okay? And they filter it through structures that are in this area. Now this area here, since it's more to the middle, it's called the medulla. And all of this different color stuff to the outside is going to be called the cortex, just like your brain. Cortex to the outside, medulla to the inside. Each of these areas is kind of triangle shaped, so they call them the renal pyramids. And those empty their urine into a series of little channels that catch it. These small ones are called minor calyx, and the large one here is the renal pelvis because it collects it from all the calyces. Alrighty? I can't think of anything else. Oh, of course, then it goes down, that fluid that we pick up goes down the two ureters and enters into the back of the bladder. This triangular area where the two ureters come in from behind and the urethra comes out, this is called the trigon because it has 3 bars. 1, 2, 3. All right. This purple thing is actually a donut around the urethra of a guy. This is the prostate gland. Okay. All right. And your bladder is made up of 3 layers. The outside connective tissue for strength is called the adventitia. All of this pink stuff is the muscularis. And then all of this stuff on the inside, including this, that's your mucosa, which happens to be transitional epithelium. Okay? All righty, and that's just close up of all those things we just mentioned. Again here. Another name for all this muscularis is called the detrusor muscle, and another name for the mucosa on the inside. All of this little lining here and all of this here, that's your transitional epithelium. Okay, here's another model. Obviously, you've got kidneys. What's the brown cover of a kidney called? The capsule. All right, the capsule. There you go down to arteries and veins. Common, external, internal. Got it? So here's the ureter heading down. Okay? That's what these are. Those are the ureters. And notice the pink on the inside, that's your transitional epithelium. Got it? And this kind of a lighter color, that's your muscularis and the outside of the adventitia. And here we are looking at one kidney sliced open. Right? All of this is the medulla. All of this light area is called the cortex. All right? Let's start with the blood vessels first. Renal artery and vein. Got it? Then our first branch is called the segmental. Because we're going to segment over to each of these different little lobules. All right? Once we go past that, it's the interlobar artery and vein. Artery red, vein blue. Because they're between the lobes. Okay? Interlobar. Then they make an arch. See how they make an arch? See the arch? So we're going to call that the arcuate. Artery red, vein blue. And then what do we have here? Little tiny blood vessels that are radiating out in the cortex. Because the cortex is this, and it's radiating out like a radiation from the sun. 10-4? Again, artery red, vein blue. Okay? All right. This set of tubes, starting with this little circle, that's a working unit of your kidney called a nephron. We'll show you a close-up of the nephron in a minute. The blood goes to these things. We filter out the bad stuff, send it down a series of tubes, and it gets collected in these smaller things called a minor calyx. Those empty into a larger one called a major calyx. Okay? And inside the calyx are the ends of all these tubes, and the ends of those tubes are called papilla. And that's what this is. That's papilla showing you through a minor calyx coming at you from on the other side of the kidney. See, it's hollow. Got it? Those are the papilla. All right? And that all empty. See, if I were to cut this, that'd be a major calyx, because this one, and this one empty into it. But they all empty into this, which is the renal pelvis. And from the pelvis, it goes down the ureter all the way down to the bladder. All right? Okay. See, there's your capsule on the outside. protection. Okay, now we're closing in. We're taking one of these triangles and blowing it up. Got it? One of these triangles. By the way, each of these kind of triangular shaped areas is called a renal pyramid. Alrighty? There you go. Renal pyramid. Alright? So, your blood comes up the interlobars. There's the arcuate. And the arcuate separates your cortex from your medulla. Got it? That's how you can tell them apart. Just follow this. Alright? The cortex will then branch into the cortical, so the arcuate goes into the cortical radius. Got it? Now watch. See how this blood vessel goes into that circle? That circle is called a Bowman's capsule. The blood vessels on the inside of the Bowman's capsule are called the glomerulus. Alright? Do you remember the zona glomerulosa in the cortex of the adrenal gland? Yeah. It produced a hormone called what? Aldosterone. And who does aldosterone talk to? The kidneys. That's why they named it the zona of the kidney, even though it's not the kidney. Because that zona is going to be talking to the kidney. All right. We call this blood vessel going in what? Afferent, and the one coming out, efferent. Okay? So the big one going in is the afferent, and the little one coming out is the efferent. E for exit, heading out. And that's the one that becomes all these capillaries, known as the peritubular capillaries, because they're around the rest of the tubes. Cool beans? This first tube coming out of the Bowman's capsule is called the proximal. Then it goes down the loop of Henle, up and down. Then it becomes the distal tube, and that goes into the collecting duct. But this one and this one and this one, all these guys empty into the collecting duct. And the collecting duct ends up in the papilla, finger-like things, going into a minor calyx that collects the urine. Does that make sense? Okay. So you can learn how the kidney functions by knowing the parts of the kidney, or you can learn the parts of the kidney by learning how the kidney functions. This is a close-up of one of these guys. Okay? That's a close-up. That's the Bowman's capsule. Here is your big fat afferent arteriole going in. This is the smaller efferent going out. And all the blood vessels are called the glomerulus. Now the glomerulus is actually covered by these cells called podocytes, foot cells. Why? Because these finger-like projections come together, they call them feet, and they create filtration slits to make sure that we don't accidentally filter out big cells. We don't want to pee out white blood cells. We need them. We don't want to pee out red blood cells. We need them. We don't want to pee out big hormones. We need those. Got it? We want to keep those. All right. Cool beans? And of course, the first tube coming out is called the proximal convoluted tubule. And it has microvilli on the inside because this is where we reabsorb the nutrients. You see, that's why dialysis wears a person out. In dialysis, all we do is push out the water from your blood with the urea, which we need to get rid of, but also all your nutrients come out. Your kidneys can put the nutrients back in through the proximal tube and just pee out the bad stuff. Dialysis tube, you lose all of it. So you've lost glucose, you've lost amino acids, you've lost nutrients. That's why you're so worn out, because besides, you're sitting here with all your blood coming out, going into the dialysis machine for a couple of hours. Right? Okay, this is your distal tube. It always comes back. See how the distal tube comes back here before it moves on to the collecting duct? Down the tube, and then here's your distal coming back before it goes to the collecting duct. That's important. Why? Because right here on your distal tube, you have specialized macula densa cells, and right here in your afferent arteriole, you've got specialized juxtaglomerular cells. And these two work together to start the renin-angiotensin mechanism. These guys are blood pressure receptors, and if they say, oh, my blood pressure is low, like I've lost blood, I need to release renin. Got it? And this one here says, I don't keep track of blood pressure, but I do keep track of salt. If my salt levels are too low, I'm going to send prostacyclin, a paracrine, right across here and tell these guys, blood pressure or no, you're going to release renin. 10-4? That's why together these guys are the beginning of the renin-angiotensin mechanism. Cool beans? Here's another model maker. We're almost done. Here's another model maker. And these are the tubes. See, Bowman's capsules. See the big afferent in and the smaller efferent coming out. The smaller efferents make all of these peritubular capillaries. Then we have our arcuate artery and vein, cutting the picture in half. That means if there was something down here, that would be the interlobar, and these would be the cortical radius, because that's the cortex, which is where most of our Bowman's capsules are, in the cortex. 10-4. And we have, which one of these two colors? This light blue or lavender, or the orange? Which one is the proximal tube? Meaning the one that comes out of that green Bowman's capsule. Which one?
The orange?
Orange, right. See how the orange goes out? But see how twisted up it is? That's why it's called convoluted. Got it? Twist it all up, and it's going to go down the loop of Henle, then back up the loop of Henle, go back to the juxtaglomerular position, and that is the one that ends up in the collecting duct. Got it? Now, do you see how this loop of Henle is still here in the cortex? But this loop of Henle is way down here in the medulla. Got it? That's on purpose. This is a, do I have that written in here? Maybe I need to be, I know I had it in here somewhere. Okay. Well, this is a cortical nephron, because most of it, including the loop of Henle, is in the cortex. But the one that's really deep is called a juxtamedullary, next to the medulla nephron. Got it? And what's the difference? Well, the purpose of the loop of Henle is the deeper down it goes, the more water we can hold. Got it? So which one holds more water for us? The shallow one or the deep one? The deep one. Got it? Now here's the thing. Most of our kidney is made of these shallow ones. But we only have about, I think, 15-20% that are the deep ones. What does that mean? It means we're used to drinking and peeing and drinking and peeing. In other words, do you want to live in the desert with no water? You can't do it. Got it? We need plenty of water because we're not going to save but this much. Got it? But what if you find yourself in the desert? What if you find yourself on a life raft in the middle of the ocean? You can survive because your body will switch over and send all the blood to the deeper ones so we can save more water. Got it? Desert animals only have these deep ones to save all the water they can. Isn't that cool? But I think 65% of our kidneys like this. All right. Here's another model. Arcuate, interlobar, cortical radiate. Got it? And here is your efferent arteriole going in, and the efferent coming out. Got it? Bigger one in, smaller one out. Glomerulus is on the inside. That's the Bowman's capsule. Since all these tubes are the same color, you just have to follow along. See how this is the proximal tube, comes out, So this is the descending loop of Henle, ascending loop of Henle. See how it comes back to the Bowman's capsule? That's your distal tube, and it's going to go to the collecting duct. Got it? The blood vessel that goes down and back up with your loop of Henle is called the vasa recta, or the blood vessel that is straight. Straight up, straight down. See how that works? And when I say who's PCT, who's VCT, who's the proximal convoluted tube, who's the distal convoluted tube. Got it? All right. Done. Thank you.